So this is a screen recording of the AlphaESS end user app. So this is the landing page we see when we first log into the system. At the top of the page, we can see the serial number of the system. This is green if the system's in normal mode. If the system's in full, that would be red. And if the system's offline, that'd be grey. That'd be grayed out, that picture. Then below that, we can see the system type. So we've got a Smart G3S5 here. And then we can see some information on the system. So at the top there, we can see the battery is at 100% state of charge. And it's currently not charging or discharging because we're seeing 0 watts on the battery. Then below that, we can see the solar power being generated right now that's been recorded by the system. So we're generating around 900 watts of solar power. And we're feeding 651 watts of that back to the grid. If we were pulling some energy from the grid, that would show grid consumption. Then below that, we can see the load on the property of 275 watts. And then this customer's got one of our Alpha EV chargers installed, and currently that charger's not doing anything, so the charger's showing 0 watts. Then if we scroll down a little bit further, we can see some statistics for today. We can see this customer's consumed 5.16 kilowatt hours of energy in their home today. The battery's charged by 1.3 kilowatt hours and discharged by 0.7. And from the grid, we've fed in 1.85 kilowatt hours and we've consumed 3.41 kilowatt hours. And then the solar generated in this particular day so far is 4.2 kilowatt hours. Then we scroll down a bit further, we can see the profit for this customer's system. This is reliant on the figures for what they pay for energy at different times of the day and how much they get paid to feed energy back to the grid. That, once you input those figures, it will start populating our profit. And this customers have, since this system's been installed, has saved themselves £1,253 from the £6,000 investment for the battery. Then just below that, we've got two kind of satellite buttons. We've got statistics and power. If we click on these, it will shortcut us for the statistics graph or the power diagram. Then below that, we've got some statistics for self-consumption and self-sufficiency. So self-consumption is the percentage of the PV that's been generated that's been used, and self-sufficiency is the percentage of energy used that's from PV. And then below that, we've got some figures that show how many trees have been planted and CO2 reduction based on not using energy from the grid. If we scroll back to the top of the page, we've got a few ways we can get out of this. We can click on the picture of the house, and this will take us into some further settings. And then we can see that ages view of our house again. And now we're on the My System tab. So we can see those live figures, and we can see that the data source is every 10 seconds. So this is updated every 10 seconds. So if some appliance goes on in the property, the load will then jump up after 10 seconds, and then the battery will discharge to cover those loads should the PV being generated not cover that load. So we can see those same statistics, the same figures that we could see before, because not much has changed in this particular property. Then just below that, we've got our state of charge again at 100%. And there's a few places, down the bottom, we've got some satellite buttons for your device and your EV charger. So if you've got the Alpha EV charger installed, this is where you can get to the settings. But we're gonna go at the top of the page. We've got our statistics first. We're going to look at our statistics for this system. So we can again see our self-consumption and self-sufficiency figures at the top of the page. And then we've got a graph below it that shows our daily figures for solar. So how much PV's been generated on load in the property, how much we've fed back to the grid, how much energy we've charged to our car if we're using the Alpha EV charger, and then grid consumption, so how much energy we've used from the grid. We can change this graph to a monthly graph, so we can see totals for the month. For this system. If we click on one of the months, we can see the totals there, so we don't have to guess what the figures are from the scale on the graph. We can also see yearly, so we can see totals for the year that systems used. Then we can see since install, so we can see if there are further fields there, we can see that. So if we just go back to the day, we can see the last week of what's going on in the property. Again, we can hover over any day. If we want to isolate any of these fields, we can just click on the icons at the bottom of the page. If I only want to see my PV, I can just see that in a much clearer if I turn off those other fields. And I can also select the, so if we go back into 2025, if I want to see January, I can click on that and I can see the figures for that week in January on this graph. Then back at the top of the page, we'll go to the power diagram next. And then we can see the power diagram of what's going on in this system. So this is today's power diagram. I'll scroll up a little bit so we can see the figures at the bottom. So there's a couple of different fields here. We've got the battery in green. Just a point to note on this, there are two scales on this graph. We've got kilowatts on the left, which relate to the load, the solar feed-in, EV charging, and grid consumption. Then we've got a scale on the right for percentage. A percentage only refers to the state of charge of the battery. So this battery here, the green of the battery is green all day. So this customer's not used their battery. So say that the battery is not showing any discharge there. We can isolate the different fields by clicking on them so we can see things a bit clearer. So I can see the customer's load here. There's a sort of steady base load there, and there's some spikes of energy use. So, they've got up in the morning, maybe made some breakfast. Maybe they've set the washing machine to run overnight, so there's a few spikes there. And then we can scroll back through previous days to see what's happened on previous days. So let's turn on some of these other fields. So let's just turn on the PV, and we can see there our kind of our parabolic curve for our PV production. There's some clouds on this day by the looks of it, so we can see there's some good PV production. Then there's some drops there when maybe clouds are going over the sun that'll reduce that production. Now, if we look on the feed-in, well, we can overlay that from our PV. Because this battery is pretty much full all day, we're seeing a lot of that PV go to feed-in. And the EV charger, the customer hasn't charged their EV on this particular day. If we scroll back through, there's a day before here where it looks like they're using more of the smart functions on the EV charger to soak up some of that excess PV generation. But we'll go on to that when we go to the settings. And then grid consumption, we can see the grid consumption looks like this customer's only charging, they're only using grid between set hours overnight. So they may have some off-peak charging going on. So we scroll back into the top of the page. The next tab we've got along is the profit tab. So if we click on that, we can see this customer's profit for self-consumption, feed-in, and load shifting. So the first field we've got is self-consumption. Self-consumption is any generation inside the property, take away the export, times by the unit rate at that time of day. Then we've got load shifting. So load shifting is any energy used from maybe an off-peak tariff. So if you've got two tariffs in your tariff setup, any energy that's used at the cheap tariff will be known as profit when it's used when the price is higher. Then we've got feed-in, which is pretty straightforward, which is any energy fed into the grid times by the feed-in rate. And again, we can see monthly total by selecting the tabs at the top. Again, we can hover over those and we can see how much we saved in 4 months, or we can go on the years as well, so we can see how much we've saved per calendar year.